One of the greatest things in the world, at least for me, is storytelling. There are incredibly brilliant and extremely strange stories, especially in movies. The ideas can be so bizarre and fascinating that I often find myself wondering, how did the creator even come up with something like this? One of the most creative filmmakers with truly unique ideas is director Christopher Nolan. He's one of the most famous directors in history and widely loved by audiences. Personally, I've already made 3 videos explaining his films, and I know I'll be making more in the future. Of course, not everyone likes him. Some people think he's overrated. But from my perspective, this man introduced something new to cinema, something that hadn't really been done before. He managed to take heavy, complex ideas, concepts that were once appreciated mostly by hardcore cinema enthusiasts, and add just enough sugar to turn them into something accessible and enjoyable for a wide audience, without making them overly complicated. That said, we can't deny that some people do exaggerate when praising his films. Still, no matter what issues you might have with his work, you can't deny that after watching Interstellar, you were amazed by what you saw. The stunning visuals, the beautiful music, the manipulation of time. And even after the movie ended, you kept thinking about the scientific concepts it presented. And when you watched Inception, you probably kept wondering, did the protagonist actually return to reality, or is he still...
Then there's The Dark Knight, with its deep moral questions. Questions that can genuinely make your head spin as you try to answer them. All of this is essentially a summary of Nolan's style, playing with time, leaving things unresolved so that you can think and interpret events in your own way. His films leave a strong emotional and intellectual impact long after they end. In fact, when asked about his films, Nolan once said, "Don't try to understand them, just feel them." And that's exactly why we're still talking about his work years later. But what if I told you that all of Christopher Nolan's stories are actually stolen? Yes, every single one of his films is based on stories that were already written by someone else. Someone you've probably never even heard of. I'm not talking about borrowing scenes or being inspired in a vague sense. I mean the core ideas themselves, taken from one particular writer. Okay, before you hit dislike and attack me in the comments, just wait. Trust me this time. Finish the video, because what we're about to talk about is actually important. Let me introduce you to someone named Jorge Luis Borges, an Argentine writer born in 1899. He wrote short stories and philosophical essays. Most of his stories are incredibly brief, often less than 20 pages, but packed with deep, mind-bending ideas. So, what does Borges have to do with Christopher Nolan? In an interview on BBC Radio, Nolan was once asked to choose a single book he would keep forever. He chose a collection of Borges' works. So, yes, he openly admits that he's deeply influenced by him. Now, forget all that for a moment and listen to this story. One day, in a strange place where time had destroyed more than it preserved, a mysterious man arrives at the ruins of an ancient temple. No one knows who he is or where he came from, but he doesn't seem lost. It's clear he has a purpose. He decides to live among the ruins and begins working on a strange project. Every night, he closes his eyes and imagines a human being in every detail, creating a complete person inside his dreams, giving him memories and a soul. Over time, the man becomes afraid. What if the person he created realizes the truth? What if he discovers that he isn't real? Then, one day, the temple catches fire. Everything burns. The man accepts his fate and prepares to die. But in the final moment, he discovers something shocking. He himself is not real. He too is just a dream, created by someone else. If I added a few scenes from Inception to that story, you'd probably think it is the movie. But in reality,
This is a short story by Borges called The Circular Ruins, published in 1940. A story about dreams within dreams, layered realities, and the fear of artificial existence. And it doesn't stop there. At the end of Interstellar, we see a place that seems infinite, a structure representing time as a physical space, almost like a library. This idea is striking and original, but it strongly resembles another Borges story, The Library of Babel. A story about an infinite library containing every possible piece of knowledge in the universe, books that include the past, present, and future. Combine that with another Borges story, The Garden of Forking Paths, where time is not linear but splits into infinite possibilities, and you'll find something very close to the ending of Interstellar.
Even Memento reflects Borges' ideas. In Borges' story, Funes the Memorious, we see a man who can't forget anything. Nolan flips the concept. His protagonist can't remember anything. Both explore memory, identity, and the burden of the human mind. In The Secret Miracle, Borges writes about a man sentenced to death who experiences an entire year inside his mind in a single moment. Again, playing with time in a way that feels very close to Nolan's style in films like Tenet. Even The Dark Knight echoes Borges' story theme of the traitor and the hero, where a supposed hero turns out to be part of a larger staged narrative. So yes, many of Nolan's films carry the spirit of Borges: time manipulation, layered realities, identity, memory, and philosophical puzzles. But does that mean Nolan is stealing? Honestly, no, not at all. Everything I said earlier was just to bring you to this exact point. What's the difference between inspiration, adaptation, and theft? Because here's the truth. There is no such thing as 100% original art. Every piece of art you've ever seen, whether it's a book, a movie, a painting, or a song, is influenced by something that came before it. Even the mind itself is constantly influenced without us even realizing it. The surrealist artist Salvador Dali once said, "Those who do not want to imitate anything produce nothing." And even more famously, Pablo Picasso said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." But don't misunderstand that. He didn't mean literal theft. He meant that great artists take ideas, transform them, reshape them, and turn them into something uniquely their own. Art is not about creating something from nothing. It's about reinterpreting what already exists. Even Borges himself proves this. In his story, Pierre Menard, author of Don Quixote, a writer attempts to rewrite Don Quixote word for word. The text is identical, but because it was written in a different time, it carries a completely different meaning. Same words, different context, new art. So when we go back to Nolan, we realize why he's considered brilliant. He takes small philosophical ideas and transforms them into massive cinematic experiences that you can see, hear, and feel. That's not theft, that's creativity. And this doesn't just apply to movies. Music, painting, cinema, everything builds on what came before. Films inspire other films. Directors inspire other directors. At the end of the day, the line between inspiration and theft is very thin. But it exists. And understanding that difference is what helps you truly appreciate art. That's it for today.